As Update 13 is now on its way for Hell Let Loose, excitement is really ramping up. But what is the real truth behind the future of Hell Let Loose? What's really coming next? If we look back at the roadmap of 2021 to 2022, many of it started to be filled in, especially with Update 13 that's now been confirmed. There's Jeeps, flamethrowers and Molotovs, well, and of course the new snowy maps. But there are still a few gaps in there, so let's have a look and see what we can decipher from what might be coming in Hell Let Loose's dark future. First off, the British faction. Where are they? What are the most hyped and needed updates to the game? And hey, look, I'm not just saying this as a biased Brit. Okay, maybe slightly. But having a new faction does take a lot of time. I mean, it took years to get the Russians, but we've known about the inclusion of the British for some time, so where are they? It was even announced at the start of 2021, and now heading into 2023, there's still no sign of these laddies coming. With this, there should be some new special editions. I'm hoping to finally get my hands on the Lee Enfield or maybe even a grenade rifle. There would be really cool and unique opportunities here for different weapons that we haven't had. The devs did a pretty good job with the Russian faction, keeping it authentic and adding in a nice variation of weaponry, especially with things like rocket barrages instead of regular bombing runs. And hey, look, if Russian medics can get people up just using their willpower and healing unconscious soldiers with their bare hands, why shouldn't a Brit be able to do the same with a cup of tea and a jammy dodger? When it comes to things other than weaponry and hot beverages though, the British also have some pretty fantastic armour that we might see. Of course, more famously, things like the Churchill, I'm not sure will be in the game. They are very heavy tanks, but very sluggish and immovable. Trying to make that fun would be like putting a ball pit at your grandma's funeral. Yet it is confirmed that most likely we're going to be getting the Valentine and the Firefly tanks. The Valentine could be interchangeable between a light or a medium tank, but I think it's most likely that it will be equivalent to the Panzer II or the Lux as a lighter variant. Good for infantry support, but taken out easily by anti-tank or other armour, yet can still cause havoc when used well. Yet historically, the British did struggle a little bit when it came to getting the best tanks, or at least the best well-rounded tanks on the battlefield, and this is where the Firefly comes in. The Firefly was based on the US M4 Sherman, but of course with a 76mm gun jammed into the front. It's interesting though that it's on this roadmap as a version of the 76 is actually already in Hell Let Loose on the US side. It's quite likely that they're just going to be using the same model but with a few British touches and variations, or we might see another US tank in the game completely, replacing the US version of this Firefly. I mean, I wouldn't personally scoff at a Pershing or something along those lines. Jesus Christ, those things were insanity. But enough about the British arms and armour. What else? Well, British maps are definitely in the pipeline. This is an interesting one as there is a big basis on the western and eastern front within the game at the moment, and the British still share a lot of the same battlefields, such as Bastogne with the US. However, if we're going to go solely British maps, maybe Sword or Gold Beach, I guess that's possible, but it seems kind of unlikely that Hell Let Loose would add in more beach maps. We've got Utah and Omaha, so they'll probably want to leave the Normandy landing stuff alone for a bit. Yet for me, I think what would be really cool would be opening up a new front. I mean, we've had the Western Front, and then with the inclusion of the Russians, it added in the Eastern Front. However, adding in a new faction like the British, we could head south into Africa. El Alamein is probably the main one that we're likely to see if we do go in that direction. Heading into the desert will add such a cool variety to the game, and I can see it going down really well with fans. As mentioned in my video about Update 13, the Russian maps aren't exactly my favourite. They didn't do all that much in expanding the pool of truly great Hell Let Loose maps. Stalingrad is an absolute clusterfuck, and Kursk, well, I think Kursk is a bit better, but it's still not ideal. Yet a desert map? Desert fighting? That is something that I could really get behind. Fighting to capture the Suez Canal, fighting alongside the riverbanks, yes, I think we need that in Hell Let Loose, and I think it would fit perfectly with the memes. So we've talked about the British, we've talked about the weapons, and we've even talked about a possibility of new maps coming into the game. But that's not all Team 17 are working on. No. The next few updates in the roadmap will add in a few nice extra little bits. For example, the Flak Panzer, essentially an anti-aircraft gun. But it's going to be interesting to see how this is added in. The silhouette that we can actually see on the roadmap looks to be a Wirbelwind. It is a beautiful anti-aircraft gun. Pretty fast, pretty speedy, and also fantastic at taking out infantry. And that's my question. Would this Wirbelwind, or whatever the Flak Panzer ends up being, just be an anti-infantry gun? A bit like the Lux that we already have, the 20 or 30mm guns. Perhaps it could be a good counter to light vehicles and half-tracks, or even the newly coming in Jeeps that we're going to see in Update 13. Maybe even though, here's a question. Adding in anti-aircraft guns could add the possibility of shooting down things like ammo drops or airheads coming over top. That could be a really cool addition, being able to shoot down those planes. Of course, that's not exactly the most likely thing in the world since, well, that adds a whole new level to coding. However, it is still a possibility. Adding in anti-aircraft guns seems a little bit suspicious, but it's most likely just going to be used as anti-infantry in the end. Then we have heavy deployable MGs, something that has been in the works for quite some time and I think isn't in right now because they haven't quite got it perfect. It's going to take a lot of balancing. Having MGs that can be deployed down, I'm assuming, by engineers, much like you would with an anti-tank gun, but it would be great for clearing out swathes of infantry, maybe defending on points or putting up hedge lines as people try and cross open fields. Pretty much anyone can then use the MG type weaponry rather than just the support classes that we have at this point in time. And then we have deployable mortars, I'd assume deployed in the exact same way that we've seen already. However, they're going to cause a bit of a bang, mostly used for attacking enemy strongholds. For example, if someone's trying to hold a position, maybe even the church on St. Mère Anglaise, putting in a mortar, shell after shell, dropping in from the top to try and take out as many defending lads as you can. Now, with the recent additions and changes with the artillery, where they no longer have that screech and it's now just a out of nowhere explosion, I can imagine mortars being just if not more terrifying. But hey, there's still quite a bit to come in Hell Let Loose, and with Update 13 on its way, I don't think it's slowing down anytime soon. But I guess we'll just have to find out in the future.